Murdaugh, Death in the Family episode 4 introduces the death of a young man named Stephen Smith, and the true story is just as tragic as what's shown on screen. Hulu's new true crime drama delves into the shocking murders of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh at the hands of Alex Murdaugh. Hulu's Murdaugh, Death in the Family reviews praise the fact that it really paints the whole picture rather than leaving things out. The Murdaugh's dirty secrets were more than just one murder. The crime uncovered a whole slew of other crimes and deaths with connections to the Murdaugh family. One of the deaths brought up is that of Stephen Smith, though the connection to the Murdaughs isn't as clear as the others. While they do cover the very basics of the case, they don't really delve into what happened with the investigation, whether the Murdaughs were truly involved, or the case's status today. Stephen Smith was a 19-year-old gay man who died on July 8, 2015. Stephen Smith was a bright young man attending Orangeburg Calhoun Technical College with dreams of becoming a nurse. He had a close relationship with his mother, Sandy, who described him as vibrant in a CNN interview, explaining that Stephen could light up any room. He was open about his sexuality, although being openly gay in South Carolina in 2015 was frowned upon, to say the least. Unfortunately, as explained in the CNN special report, his life was cut unceremoniously short when his body was found at 4 a.m. on July 8, 2015, on Sandy Run Road. As shown in episode 4 of Murdaugh, Death in the Family, he had blunt force trauma to the head, causing skull fractures. His shoulder was also dislocated, and he had minor abrasions and defensive wounds. All this indicated a murder. Shockingly, despite having no signs of this being the case, Stephen Smith's case was ruled a hit and run. His injuries were not indicative of that crime, and his shoes were still on his feet, which isn't the case in most hit and runs. The scene also had no debris, which would have been expected if that were true. Unfortunately, the hit-and-run ruling ended the investigation. A year after her son's death, Sandy Smith begged state and federal agencies to help. She wrote a letter, available on Lunashark Media, begging for the FBI's assistance with the case, claiming the local investigators were intentionally derailing the investigation. Sandy Smith also reached out to the Attorney General. Neither helped. The Murdaugh murders led law enforcement to reopen the case. After Stephen Smith's case was ruled a hit-and-run, law enforcement seemed uninterested in reassessing the case. However, that changed after Alex Murdaugh murdered his wife and son, Maggie and Paul Murdaugh. The South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, SLED, announced in 2021 that they'd found a new lead while investigating the Murdaugh murders that led them to reopen the case. It's never been publicly revealed what they found to prompt this, which has led to speculation from many people. In March 2023, Stephen Smith's body was exhumed so that a second autopsy could be performed. The results led SLED to reclassify Smith's death as a homicide, instead of a hit-and-run. After that, they began working diligently with the Smith family to find the person responsible for the murder of Stephen. The Murdaugh's involvement was suspected but never proven. Even though the Murdaugh murders led the state to reopen the case, there is no publicly available evidence to suggest that the Murdaugh family or Buster Murdaugh was involved in Stephen Smith's death. Unfortunately, long before Stephen Smith's death was ruled a homicide, rumors spread that the Murdaugh family was allegedly involved in the murder, which has influenced public discourse. According to Liz Farrell, host of Murdaugh Murders, the original rumor was that Stephen was planning to go away with Buster Murdaugh and his family, that they were together romantically, via CBS News. Stephen reportedly told her he was romantically involved with someone from a powerful family, which would align with the rumor. However, no proof of this relationship ever surfaced. The suspicions surrounding the Murdaughs were furthered by the case file from the Multidisciplinary Accident Investigation Team, which initially handled the case. The Murdaughs were mentioned dozens of times in the files, via CBS News. On top of that, Buster Murdaugh and Stephen Smith were classmates. However, it's important to note that these things don't necessarily implicate Buster Murdaugh. Despite popular belief, the Murdaughs have adamantly denied their involvement in Smith's death numerous times. Buster Murdaugh repeatedly asserted his innocence. The investigators have also never publicly named any of the Murdaughs as suspects. While the rumor mill will undoubtedly continue churning, Buster Murdaugh has started suing news sites that allegedly implicated him in the crime for libel, via WSAV. Stephen Smith's murder remains unsolved to this day. Unfortunately, a decade after Stephen Smith's murder, his case remains cold. At the start of 2025, the reward money was raised from $30,000 to $50,000 for any information that leads to the identification and conviction of the person responsible for Stephen Smith's murder. This reward has been announced on billboards across the state, via Greenville News. Eric Bland, the lawyer representing the Smiths, shared with People that he believes this was a hate crime, motivated by Smith's sexuality. However, South Carolina is one of the few states without a statewide hate crime law, meaning it won't be investigated or eventually tried as such.